Okay, everybody, welcome to this episode of the In Full Stride podcast and our school project. This episode is about Carson Gambaro and his rise to glory that we've seen so rapidly these past 3 years. So we just have some questions and we just are excited to talk to you, and we want to thank you for joining us.
Dude, it's a pleasure, Darren and Othmane, to be a guest on my own show for a change.
Yeah, it's great to have you on here.
Yeah, it's like I have the easy job now. I don't have to worry so much about what I'm asking my guests and whatnot and whether or not I'm saying the right things. I can just say whatever I want here.
So the fans are going to learn a lot about you today.
Let's hope.
So for our first thing, we just want you to introduce yourself and explain like who you work for, what companies, like what positions you do, and how long you've been at it. Like when did you start, all that.
All right, so first things first, I'm Carson Gambaro. I've been working for MileSplit for nearly 3 full years, technically 8 full seasons if you include cross country 2022 to indoor 2025. We're still in the midst of outdoors, and that was really my starting point back in cross country 2022. But even further back, I really got my start with covering track as a public address announcer at my high school, which was Stillwater, class of 2018. And it was really the thing that I needed that I didn't know I needed to get my starting point there, because I'd always been fond of announcing, watching sports as a kid growing up. And once I got on the mic, that's when I first got my taste of what it would take. And doing it more, I grew to love it more. And I knew that once I saw MileSplit New York was hiring contributors, I came out of college in 2022 without any full-time job lined up. I had a fun summer gig, which we may or may not explore later in this episode, but that was merely to buy me some time. It wasn't until I saw that opening that I knew I had to seize upon that, because through my years at college, that's when I really rediscovered, after my competitive career at high school, my passion for this sport that I had dedicated, especially the later portions of my high school career too. So I've really just been focused on getting more and more reps. I've gotten bigger and bigger opportunities and loving it.
That's great to hear. So I just want to elaborate more on the MileSplit start. So you began as an intern for MileSplit. Is that correct?
It's more so a contributor. That's my formal title with MileSplit New York, contributor, which is essentially you go to a meet, you do on-site coverage, whatever that be, whether you're a photographer snapping flicks of all the runners or field event athletes, doing interviews. That's where I really started, doing the interviews on site, as well as filming race clips throughout cross-country courses. And ironically, my phone died midway through the first job, which was at the Queensbury Invitational 2022. So rookie mistakes right off the bat. But I knew that with such a vague, almost an impressionistic job title, that I could make more of it than what met the eye. And so first time I got the chance to talk to my boss, I made it clear to him that I wanted to get into commentary. And my first time hopping on the mic for MileSplit New York was another very raw opportunity. That was Cross Country State Meet 2022, and I was doubling up on camera operations, freezing atop a press box, had no idea what I was in for. And I can't say it went the best it could have went, but that was kind of what really awakened me to just how tough and cutthroat the job can be.
So you touched a little bit about your how you got into it in high school. You got the call to do a PA job at a track meet, is that right? Or a football game?
It was first a track meet. I did a couple football games more so as a shadow opportunity, but it was the Stillwater Rock and Relays the year after I graduated. Dan Sheehan, a guy who's been a great mentor to me, announced all of our high school races, and he always had these cool stat lines about us available. Like he would always try and make sure he knew where we were going to college, whether or not we were going to be running track and field competitively, and he would always just try and get to know us. His daughter was in my grade as well, so he had a bit of an extra incentive for her case, but he did so for us as well. Like it was so cool hearing my name on the mic if he was filming races for us, and that made me want to be part of that, and he was able to bring that to life for me. And that was the example that once he gave me the opportunity to join him for that relays races, that I wanted to start to learn how to habitualize, if that's a word, for the athletes that I call and cover now.
Very inspirational.
Appreciate it.
So did that opportunity and experience and how much you appreciated it and that mentorship contribute to your decision to study in the prestigious Newhouse School of Broadcasting at Syracuse University?
Definitely, because that was right around the time my first year after high school. See, I didn't even know I wanted to do broadcasting straight out of high school. I've always been such an in-the-moment type of person, and so I didn't really spend a lot of my high school career focusing on what my future would entail. I just wanted to go to a place where I knew I couldn't turn wrong. And like I said before, I've been so fond of sports my whole life, ever since I started watching and being an active listener to primetime football games and baseball, whatnot. A lot of the big names that have come through those doors at Syracuse at Newhouse School were on those primetime broadcasts. And so I said to myself, hey, why not me? And I had to keep my grades up. It was a tough first year academically, but I managed to get my grades high enough to transfer in. And even though I didn't really do much in between then that first PA announcing gig for track and like after the COVID era, that was still a really good starting point for me, which I was able to build upon once I actually got into Newhouse.
Very interesting. So did you attend Newhouse for a full 4 years, or how did the program work?
So I started my first year in arts and sciences, undeclared, and I did what they call an intra-university transfer, IUT informally. I've been kind of replaying that memory a lot back because, you know, it was recently Syracuse graduation season, and you see there's like a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds collecting their degrees, coming from different stages of the game, and see a lot of other people that I went to school with, they knew from age 10 perhaps that they wanted to do that major, broadcast and digital journalism, in the Newhouse School at Syracuse University. I was not one of them. And so once I got in there, that's when I had to really get familiar with the ropes. And it was a bit shocking at first because I could tell that a lot of my classmates, my friends, were a little further along the road than me, and that kept me on my toes. That kept me, like I said, an active listener, an active learner, trying to develop good habits as far as how I deliver a sentence. Something to a T is that.
Right.
You know, that.
Yeah.
Had I not gone to the Newhouse School, I would probably be talking to you in a completely different manner than I am right now.
So you would say that you accredit a lot of your, I guess, like skill for broadcasting. Would you say it's natural talent, or did you pick it up at, you know, various points, specifically Newhouse?
In some ways it's a blend, right? Because not everybody has equal gifts in terms of understanding how to enlighten or bring life to a certain situation. Even at Newhouse, it wasn't something that I fully understand. I listened back to some clips of me announcing high school games when I was there, you know, for student clubs, and I'm just thinking, wow, that was me once. But yeah, you have to put yourself in a place where you can get good constructive feedback, and that's really what a lot of my time at Newhouse taught me. Getting feedback from others, even something as simple as a way that you could convey a story in a better way. Like, for example, if I'm announcing one of your guys' races, right? Like, take a 4x8, just throwing out a completely random example. And on the track now, in the lead, the Saratoga Blue Streaks 4x8 100-meter relay winners of cross-country, indoor and outdoor states. That's just a good, I mean, that's very raw right there. That wasn't really prepared for, but learning how to say that as best as possible in the littlest amount of time possible, perhaps, not without rushing it, of course, because you don't want to just sound like you're completely reading through your notes when you're carrying a live broadcast, but knowing how to journalistically put something into as digestible as a perspective as possible for your viewers.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense.
So it's about balancing knowing all the information and having all that in your back pocket about all these athletes and all these different events, and also making it not only informative but engaging to the listeners and the future listeners on the streams and everything. So is that the balance you're constantly trying to strike with your approach to commentary? Yeah,
there's definitely a balance to it, because there may be some races on long days at long meets where I don't have every single tidbit about every single runner. That's right, I don't know everything. And that's something that you have to use, that ability to deliver a race to compensate sometimes. And so I can just go for a strict play-by-play approach to a race where I might not have all those details handy, and maybe find them after. Like, let's say if an athlete wins by a blowout margin. look at that. She PR'd by 20 seconds in the mile. And that's how I can make the race more exciting and memorable for somebody. Because when you PR for any distance by 20 seconds, let alone down to something like an 800, you're going to remember that. And why not help add to that memory as a sentimental person already?
All right. Speaking of sentiments and sentimental moments, out of all the, I mean, it must be thousands of races at this point that you've announced, what would you say is the one that holds the most value to you, or the one that you just remember the most?
One that definitely sticks out to me. It's funny because we were talking about potential future podcast guests for In Full Stride, and one of them that came up is a fellow Saratogian of ours, Emily Bush. And her 3K indoor state title was one of the most meaningful races from 2024 that I think I've ever called. Even if I didn't say every word cleanly, just I think the raw emotion of the situation, given that I watch it back and I still see her reaction when she sees the clock and sees that she broke Kelsey Camille, who is widely considered to be one of the greatest distance runners in one of the greatest distance running programs ever. When she saw that she broke her indoor school record from 9:21.11 to 9:20.40, there's nothing like that. That race just had it all. It was her first track state title as someone who was more so known for being a strength cross-country runner. She'd had several top 3 finishes, but just stories like that where athletes can break mold, that's special right there.
Absolutely. A race to remember for sure. Both of us witnessed live.
What a race.
And so that's actually surprising, though, that you didn't mention the Grant Fisher world record 5K that you announced at the BU Valentine Invitational. Would you like to speak on that race at all?
Oh, absolutely. You know, it was surreal. I still think about it. It's like, man, I really announced my first world record in only my 3rd year calling the sport. So I remember finding out about that a couple weeks in advance and texting my co-announcer, our lead guy at Boston with FlowTrack, Phil Grove, and I said, just saw this and I couldn't be more excited for the opportunity to do it with you, because he's been the voice of Boston University for several years. He's a guy who sets such a high standard. He has such entrenched knowledge of programs of all sizes at the college level. He's just a track junkie, man. And when they called me about that, it was around a month in advance of the BU Valentine meet, and that was before I even knew that there was going to be a world record attempt. That was before I even knew what was going to come at Millrose with the 7:22.91 that Grant ran just 6 days prior to the 5K. And so obviously that was when I was weighing my options, because I'd already been traveling so much. I'd been going to Ocean Breeze in Staten Island. I'd been going to Virginia Beach for the VA Showcase, and I'd had another trip to Ocean Breeze the week after that. But, you know, once you get an opportunity like that, ultimately, no matter how much mental tugs of war you have to play with yourself, because I had a really fun band gig as well back home. One of my favorite band gigs I had to miss for that. But once you take care of all that, you know that you're making the right decision whenever you put yourself in that race. And I knew that I had to have not just stat lines handy, but good anecdotal things, like take a quote from Grant Fisher from one of his previous season efforts, stuff that's relevant, up to the minute, stuff that adds to the conversation, because I was the color analyst there. I wasn't going to be the one delivering Grant Fisher and carrying him through the line. And so I had to know my place and understand the assignment, and couldn't be happier more for the opportunity.
There was that clip of him in the last lap or two went pretty viral, I guess, on Reels. And I remember a lot of super into running people would be like, oh, did you see the Grant Fisher 5K 12:46 record? 12:44?
12:44, yeah.
12:44. And your voice is over this viral reel saying oh, the lapped runners won't get out of the way,
Oh, yeah. Well, seriously, what were they doing right there? No, if they're watching this video, no hard feelings, but it happens in a lot of Boston races. But yeah, I know that was one of the big takeaways of that race too, because there was no real certainty at that point in time. Of course, we're just trying our best to say something non-repetitive, because we don't just want to be saying for 25 straight laps, and it's Grant Fisher in the lead, and Fisher's still in the lead. We're trying to just continue to add the next sentence to the story, or chapter, or whatever you will. And when that came, it's like, man, It was shades of the Grand Blanks race from the BU opener meet that I had been on color for at the beginning of the season, and he had arguably been cost the collegiate record by Nico Young indoors by having to go all the way out into lane 3 just a few laps away from the finish.
Yeah, it's like really frustrating to watch, like just guys that are dropped off the lead. Great runners in their own respect, running 13:30 or something, but when someone's going for a record like that, it makes every little second count. So good on you for shaming them a little bit.
Well, it's kind of like me, right? I had to know my place as the color commentator. I can't be just constantly butting in on my play-by-play guy because that's disrespectful. And it's a world record attempt. That's the big premise of the race. And so that's just really the idea behind that.
So when you're announcing races, obviously you're using many different forms of rhetoric and, just probably stuff that you picked up in school, especially at the Newhouse School. But tell us, I guess, what are you thinking when you're announcing a race? Obviously you're thinking, different anecdotal stories and stat lines you can tell, but how do you deliver them most effectively in a way that really just engages the viewer?
Really just stay in the moment. I was thinking about this a lot today. I think about it a lot because sometimes, especially when you find out you're getting the call for a huge race, I've done 2 Penn relays, and as you know, there are some races with very high anticipation like that at that meet. The Quincy Wilson versus Jamaica, it's obviously a lot more to it than that, but that 4x4 always has a lot of anticipation to it. And I think a lot of times about, how can I say something that people will never forget? Because truly, as someone who wants to announce at the highest level, at the Olympic level, it would be really nice to think that my voice could be memorable to a degree, to the point where people can almost associate it with the sport. But you can't let that idea stop you from simply doing your job. And as a play-by-play announcer, your job at its core is to tell the people what is happening, to keep them engaged, like you said, and sometimes that's what you ultimately have to resort to when something unexpected happens. And when the unexpected happens, I'm going to bring up another Quincy Wilson race, the 500 meters at the VA Showcase. I don't think anybody was expecting Andrew Salvadon to beat him there. And I feel like in that moment, when they made contact at the top of the break on that second go-around, that's when the race started to become less of a Quincy Wilson record attempt and more of a what is happening type of race. And so just keeping your reactions, understanding the situation, keeping it all raw, present, that's what can really help you put yourself on the same page as your fans and help them feel like one of you, or help you feel like one of them in return.
Absolutely. So you spoke on potential, the big goal is to call for the Olympics. And obviously, you seem to be on the right path to get there. You've called 1 world record, so hopefully more to come. But my question is, what do you see coming for you in the near future, and what are, I guess, your other goals for the long term?
So one of the big goals I had coming into this season was to get a lot more involved on the college scene. And I wasn't really sure how, but I knew that last year, talking back to the BU Valentine Invitational, where I ended up being part of my first world record, it was last year that MileSplit, they had extended me a shadow opportunity to go and be alongside Phil Grove for a day at Boston. And it just didn't seem to fit in with my schedule then, which is unfortunate. It would have been a completely out-of-pocket, unpaid opportunity. And I can't say I made the right decision by not making the time for it. And having that thought in the back of my mind, I told myself, hey, what if I reach out again about the BU opener meet, the meet where I was part of the Grand Blanks race, the Parker Wolf and Ethan Strand race, back when they ran those 7:30s in the 3K with Yassine and Gary not too far behind. And I reached out and said, hey, I'd totally be willing to do it. I'm free. I've got no conflicts. I'll pay for my lodging. I'll pay for everything that I got to pay for, just so long as I can be part of this, be part of it, and learn. And they just seemed to be satisfied enough with the performance that I gave them on short notice for the Penn Relays the year before, because I was not part of the original plan there either, but they liked the way that I came prepared enough to the point to extend me that opportunity, not just at the BU opener meet, but again at the BU Valentine meet. So from there, I just got a lot more involved with the college scene. I called like at least 2 or 3 more college meets, including another Penn Relays, which has another plethora of college races to it. So I'm making my way in there, and I'm just hoping to keep further entrenching myself.
Yeah, that was one thing I was going to ask about. Is the past year, it seems like you've done a lot more NCAA stuff, or just races featuring NCAA guys like the ones you mentioned. But like as you've gone to these higher levels, we talked about the world record. We talk about these NCAA records that seem to happen every weekend nowadays. But and you're just involved with so many of them, but like you still seem to come back and have like such loyalty. Like you're doing Suburban Councils on Wednesday, you're going to do the state meet, I assume, all that stuff. Like do you hold like loyalty to like not only Section 2, but just like New York State high school running? Like
don't mess up.
Absolutely. That's a no-brainer right there, because this is where I first became a track nerd. This is where I first started scouring the Section 2 Harrier stat lines to see like who would I be going up against in a certain race back when I was still in high school, starting to geek out on that stuff. And even since high school, before I even knew that anything with MileSplit would be possible, I would still check in and see what was happening, mostly with regards to my former teammates, but every now and then I'd see a crazy thing. Like I think 2022, I saw Carter Kukerstein from Shenandoah. He dropped a 10.2. Windy, of course, but still all conditions New York State record. Like stuff like that always piqued my interest and got me interested in covering the sport more as a freelancer, in addition to getting more announcing opportunities. And really it was the New York State meet, my first true state meet, not cross country. Yes, cross country, but more so indoor, where I got in probably the most commentary friendly environment that I'd ever been in. And it was there where I first felt like I was able to bring a lot of the storylines that I'd been following through seasons long to a conclusion, to a climax. Like I aim to do for the outdoor meet, like I aim to do with whatever I'm doing at the cross-country state meet, whether or not live streaming is permitted. And, that obviously changes my assignment. I did interviews post-race rather than live commentary for our most recent state meet at Queensbury, which may or may not be the case these next 2 years. We'll see. But yeah, just being in the position to bring those storylines to inclusion, there's no place to do it like here in New York.
That's good to hear. I mean, I'm glad we give you good races to announce. But you said that the indoor state meet was like a very commentating or announcing friendly environment. How would you describe an announcing friendly environment?
Well, all of the Ocean Breeze meets that I'd been doing my first year indoors were inside the press box. They had us cooped up inside the press box, a little disconnected from the fan base. All the athletes and spectators sitting in the stands. For states, my boss said, we're moving outside. We're moving up to the big platform. And he said, hey, feed off the crowd energy. And it was truly special. I felt like that really brought me to another level excitement-wise, where I couldn't quite reach in previous meets, and something that I'm still learning how to reach when I do remote broadcast, another thing that I've picked up this past year. And so once I was surrounded like that, I was like, okay, I'm having fun. I'm feeling like I said before, when I'm living in the moment on the mic, I feel like I'm one with the crowd, and I can even make more direct observations. Like if I see somebody I know, like a coach or an athlete or even a sibling or parent just cheering from the stands, I can add that little tidbit and add more to what people are already seeing and hearing on screen.
Very interesting.
I guess in conclusion, more or less, we were just want to highlight exactly or I guess hammer home the pace at which you've progressed through the ranks and through the sport, going from it sounds like unpaid, slightly paid, going to Suburban Council champs and cross country at the state park, 10 minutes from your house, to driving to Boston, driving to Philly, calling the biggest races that exist in the sport. What qualities about yourself and about what have you tried to do to make that possible, as far as you would take this into any other career if you went into this? What, I guess, advice would you give to other people trying to go through it as fast as you have?
You have to remember why it is you're doing something. I think that a lot of the meets in my first couple of seasons, I would always try and get familiar early on when I started with what was done before me. Back in the previous generation, of toga distance greats. There would be a good network of MileSplit guys that would bring their camera crews. They would do all these fun interviews, and then again, they might not have asked all the same questions or taken the same approach as me, but I would always try and pick up on what they did and see how I could add to that. And a lot of times I would wonder maybe why or not they didn't take a certain opportunity to deliver something or approach an assignment in a certain way. And a lot of times when I got to certain meet sites, I understood, because think about it. When you're on the top of the press box doing camera and commentary for a cross-country state meet, that's when you realize that this is a moment that you have to be mentally tough in. This is a moment that you have to remind yourself that people have done this before, and it's not for the faint of heart. And you have to remind yourself of that end goal that you have in order to build some sort of forward path toward that, to keep you going even in the moments where you feel like you shouldn't be in, because, oh man, I've worked so hard. I've called all these amazing races up until now. I should be sitting pretty, right? I should be getting all the big gigs. No, you cannot afford to let yourself get entitled when it comes to that. You have to stay humble, stay grounded. I don't do the best at it often, but each and every day I try and find a way to remind myself of that. And a lot of the bigger meets have been my reminder of that, because you really can't take any opportunities, big or small, for granted.
Thank you for that. Very valuable insight.
Yeah. And thank you so much once again for doing this podcast. Do you have any other notes or things to mention?
I think I'm going to have you guys on as guests sometime so we can learn a little bit more about you. But I appreciate you guys again for bringing me over here to the chill zone for a nice little episode.
Yeah, no problem.
You're always welcome.
We need the viewers to A, rank the chill zone, the setup, and B, rank whose outfit is the best, because we have 3 completely different outfits. So very different.
I think
vibes.
we know the answer.
I'm going to have to put a poll up on the Info Stride Podcast Instagram.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Yep. Thank you.
Good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.